our next speaker will be Conor Bambrick, Director of Climate Policy, Environmental Advocates.
Good afternoon, and thank you to the New York State Assembly Standing Committees on Energy, Science and Technology, Environmental Conservation, and Transportation for holding this hearing today. This is a critically important topic if we're going to be able to meet our climate action, our CLCPA goals, and environmental advocates, and why we really appreciate the opportunity to comment. We've submitted our written testimony, so I'll just take this opportunity here just to run through some of the areas I'd like to highlight. We know that we need to move to fully electrify the transportation sector. We need to do it as quickly as possible to adequately capture all the health, economic, and social justice benefits of moving off of oil. As this transition takes place, though, and I think it's been clear from what we've been hearing throughout the day, the state needs to have a comprehensive and strategic game plan for publicly available and accessible charging. And we're seeing a lot of examples of various programs and initiatives that are out there today. I think I can tell is there needs to be more coordination. It needs to be more public. With the transportation sector being the second largest greenhouse gas emissions source in the state, the Climate Action Council's draft plan has envisioned moving all motor vehicles off of internal combustion engines by the year 2050. The legislature is seeing this as the inevitable direction based on the climate law acted last year to require the sales of all new vehicles be zero emission by 2035. In addition, we have a scoping plan. By 2030, a third of all passenger vehicles, about 3 million, will have to be zero emissions, and approximately 10% of the medium to heavy duty vehicles will also be zero emissions by 2035. Given that we only have about 0.5% passenger vehicles electric right now, the scale and time frame for this change requires significant and strategic investments for EV charging infrastructure. As I said earlier, there are a number of different programs out there that, when coordinated, could be effective, such as the Clean Fleets New York program, funding current fast chargers. We heard about the Make Ready program. Certainly there could be improvements there, including, as we heard from National Grid, the need to scale up on medium to heavy duty aspects of it. And then additionally, the rebate programs that are resources put into those to make sure people have more access to those. Really a good illustration of how it seems as though we're not being strategic about our investments, can be found in Comptroller Napoli's recent audit of NYPA's Evolve New York program. Basically, what the controller found is that NYPA has failed to install EV chargers where they're most needed by New York's nearly 50,000 registered EVs, leaving nearly half of the state's counties without any NYPA installed charging stations. The original purpose of this program was to make sure that NYPA was getting into the areas that are currently underserved to support where the market is not already stepped in. But unfortunately, as we've seen in this report, the ports are not located where they're most needed, and counties with high numbers of EVs have relatively few charging stations, while some counties have few EVs but high number of charging. In terms of where more chargers are needed, counties with the most need include Suffolk, Nassau, New York, Monroe, Bronx, and Kings. Studies have indicated that workplace charging stations have the highest utilization and therefore are However, just because some charging stations will not be profitable and will operate on the margins doesn't mean we can't do without them. It's essential that NYPA fulfill the intended purpose of installing charging stations where they're sorely needed, but maybe less profitable. For comparison, most gas stations don't make a profit from selling gas. And when the price of oil goes up, they can even lose money. NYPA needs to keep its promise on deploying charging stations where they are most needed, which includes along major state highway corridors. To 2014 New York law, municipalities now have the option of purchasing streetlight infrastructure from their electric utilities. There are many potential benefits associated with this, including community benefit that could come in the form of curbside EV charging. Municipalities can modify certain streetlights to serve as charging ports in neighborhoods where residents rely predominantly on street parking. The city of Los Angeles has converted hundreds of street lamps to accommodate curbside chargers. New York City is currently operating a curbside pilot program that has included the installation of 100 new level 2 curbside charging stations. And while it's important for the state to be focused on publicly available charging stations, there should also be a plan to electrify depots in communities facing cumulative impacts from environmental burdens. While the MTA is going through an EV bus planning process, the state is missing a broad-based plan in its electrification strategy. And then I just want to touch a little bit on the importance of multifamily home charging. While curbside and highway charging stations are important, the cheapest, most reliable, and convenient way is to charge at home. For those who live in multi-dwelling units, approximately 24% of New Yorkers, a shared station for use by building residents make EVs more appealing and a more feasible option. Building codes and whatnot, we should be putting in place EV-ready building codes for new construction, substantially renovated construction, and for parking facilities. The state should, as I mentioned earlier, be providing more support for level 2 chargers in the form of rebates, including enhanced rebates for chargers that'll be installed in disadvantaged communities. And then finally, as the draft Climate Action Council Climate Plan recommends, the Public Service Commission should further examine the effectiveness of the per plug incentive program to support near-term build out of public and fleet charging infrastructure to make charging most cost utilization is low, and a change should be considered in the structure of demand charges that is cost-based and non-discriminatory. The PSC and NYSERDA should also consider how to maximize the value of zero-emission vehicles as interactive assets and storage devices, which could potentially lower electric grid upgrade costs and generate revenue for ZEV owners, and whether any policy changes are required to enable these use cases. And with that, I will pause, and thanks again to the members and the chairs.